all. Welcome to episode 3 of the Workplace Violence Mitigation Podcast. I am your host, Lieutenant Dan. Today we have a very, very special guest. I'm honored to have Grant Whitus with us. Grant and I have known each other for a number of years. Grant also comes from the law enforcement perspective, being in law enforcement himself for a number of years, and I'll let him give his bio to you folks here in a couple of seconds. But Grant is the author of a book called Riddled. See it right here on the screen. It's available on Amazon. Great read, great story. Grant has had a very colorful career in law enforcement, and Grant was the first SWAT officer through the door at the Columbine incident. So that's going to be the focus of some of the things that we're talking about here today. Grant, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of background on you and where you come from?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm retired SWAT Sergeant Grant Whitus. I did 27 years law enforcement, 17 on SWAT. Last 7, I was a team leader there. So, um, my time was done in Jefferson County out in Colorado, which is basically ground zero for mass shootings. And, as of, last couple of weeks, there was another one up in Evergreen, which is in the same jurisdiction. So we, from starting in the Albertsons that we'll talk about, there is no ending to mass shootings in Jefferson County, Colorado. So it's just never going to stop. And the lure to all these people across the world to go see Columbine and the memorial there is never ending.
So, Grant, I did read your book, and we've discussed this a number of times ahead of time in our interactions with each other on different projects and whatnot. The Columbine incident is something that we talk about in almost every class we do. And the reason that we bring it up and discuss it is because it was the catalyst of change for how law enforcement responds to these incidents. The protocols of the day back then were not really what they are now. We've evolved. Law enforcement has evolved, and it changed things. But my perspective is from talking to people that have been there and talking to you and watching the news. And that was the other component as well. Columbine unfolded on live TV, which was a new phenomenon that nobody was used to. But you were actually there. You were the first member of your SWAT team through the front door of that incident, which I find absolutely amazing. So why don't you take our listeners to that day, if you can, and kind of give us a rundown of what actually happened at that school?
Oh, certainly, Dan. What actually was my day off. I was at home working on the boat. The SWAT pager, man, we had pagers back then for all you young cops. Went off and they said that we've got a shooting going on at Columbine. Everybody respond in. So we all came in. I was the furthest one out. I lived furthest away. So the SWAT van was gone. I grabbed a car, my gear, met him down there. By the time I even got on the street, Pierce Street, where Columbine is located, I couldn't even park on the street. There was so much law enforcement. There's probably 300 or 400 there already. I ran up the back of the SWAT van, trying to get information. They just threw my tack vest on, my helmet, threw me the shield and said, "We're going in." And it was literally that fast. So we walked up behind a tractor. I jumped up and put a shield in front of the guy driving the tractor. He dumped us off basically the back of Columbine, where we met up with about a half dozen Denver cops that were already there. And the conversation was, last place we saw him was in the cafeteria. We're going in there and we're going now. And it was that fast. The strange part about that, the worst part was we were having this conversation, 3 feet from 2 young children, teenagers that were killed outside. So the perspective of what was going on was tremendous. And the amount of bombs that had went off and all the reports of it, the first thing you think is, well, we're getting into shooting, but more than likely we're going to get blown up. So we walked down about 20 yards right to the cafeteria window. One of my SWAT guys broke the window. I jumped through the window, fully expecting to be in a firefight at that point. And then all I could hear was sirens. Of course, the from the bombs going off in the cafeteria, the alarms went, the fire extinguishers went, or I'm sorry, um, all that, all basically everything went off. So we've got, you know, water everywhere, and we're tromping through water. We start searching room to room at that time. So there was about our entire team and about six more Denver cops at that time. And the first room we came to as we went out in that cafeteria, all the doors locked when the fire alarm goes off. Of course, we had no keys to it. Everything was kind of brand new then. And, we broke the door, and it was full of about 15 kids. And Dan, one of the oddest things happened during that I talk about often was we opened that door, and clearly we're dressed in all our SWAT gear. That shield says sheriff across it, and I couldn't get anyone to move, teachers or children, inside that because the fear. They were safe where they were at. So I had to reach down, grab the first one, pull them up, and then after I did that, I just kept saying, "Go, go, go, go," and then they'd all run out. Well, this phenomenon went all the way through. We did the entire basement, and every room was like that. We could not get people to move. So moving room to room, looking for the shooters was painstakingly slow. And you could see where bombs had went off everywhere. At one point, they said there was a bomb in a backpack somewhere. So be careful around the backpacks. And, it's high school. There was backpacks every 2 feet across that
Sure.
cafeteria. Yeah. So ultimately, we worked our way up to the second level where we ran into, the teacher that had been shot there. So we worked on Mr. Saunders. We took turns just trying to save his life. He had taken a couple shots, bleeding out. But when we first got to him, he could speak. We were talking with him. We had to get all the kids out of there. Still no idea where the shooters were in that school. We had a pretty good idea that they were on that second level where we were, but no idea because there was probably no less than probably 30 or 40 reports of where they were in the school and where they had moved to in the school based on all the phone calls coming in. We did know at one time that they were in the library, but we didn't know if they were still there. So we worked on the teacher as long as we could, trying to get medical in there. As you look back, geez, you're going back to 1999. Fire department's not coming in, right? You didn't have fire department coming in with law enforcement to get a guy out, so we couldn't get the fire personnel in there to help him. Finally, we just decided we're carrying him out, and we started doing that. They said medical's going to be up there momentarily. We set him down. Ultimately, they really never showed, and he had died there. Um, so basically, we left that room right there, and right in front of us was the library. So we started walking towards the library, and as we got close to the library, it was about half of it, halfway up were windows, and we started seeing bodies, laying down as we got close to the entrance doors. Were so two entrance doors, and then it became pretty apparent everything was right there, and that's where it happened. So we immediately made entry into there. Um, I took a left in there. Of course, you've got the huge, bookshelves everywhere, so you can't see past one aisle at a time. Uh, I stepped over three of the girls. Two had died. One was still alive. And the poor thing is reaching up like, get me out of here. But we couldn't stop it. I was 100% certain they were there. And that was where we were going to have our firefight at. Uh, Nonetheless, moved down to the end of that bookshelf, went a couple up about two or three aisles, and there Klebold and Harris laying there, gunshot wounds, self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Now, I'd like to say that was the end of what was happening there, and we could get all the kids out. We had only cleared portion of the school. The other portion of the SWAT team was doing auditorium. However, we heard there was 7 to 9 shooters, so we found two, and now off we went looking for the other 5 to 7 shooters, basically, which took hours longer.
Yeah.
And again, we're stuck in that slow motion because every room we come to, we have to break the door to get in, and then we're getting the children out. And ultimately it was just Klebold and Harris, but unbelievable. And if you look back at how law enforcement was done and how it changed, like we had two great cops. Neil Gardner, the SRO, was on lunch at the time, and Paul Smoker, one of the motorcycle cops, uh, got the first call, first one there at that back window, which was not too far from the library, and exchanged gunfire with Klebold back there. He's firing a rifle at them, and these two guys are shooting at him with a handgun. And of course, back then, procedure, lock it down, call SWAT, wait for all that time till SWAT got there. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. And, I've always praised those two because there was so many law enforcement there, even at the time they went to the back and started that firefight. But they were the only two that engaged in that firefight, and no one else came up at that time to help them out. So, I can't say enough about those two for what they tried to do.
So two of your guys prior to your team arriving actually engaged these two shooters in a firefight.
They did. Klebold, anyway. They never did. We assume Harris, looking back, hindsight, Harris was probably still in the library, but Klebold came to that exit door at the back, and that's where that firefight started. He heard him coming up. So there was some good footage of the firefight between them. But they were in a losing situation. He's firing a rifle, and these poor
Sure.
guys with handguns back in that day. Like I said, they did great. At one time, Paul thought he'd hit him. Klebold spun around, so he thought at least put a round in him, but come to find out, that didn't happen.
So, Grant, can you tell me how much time do you think elapsed from the initiation of this thing with these two shooters? And I try not to give them any kind of billing by using their names. So, um, you know, I'll call them Adam Henry 1 and Adam Henry 2. How's that? Um, so how much time elapsed from the time this thing started to the time your team actually made entry, or you made entry through that window?
Well, we were looking at least it was well over an hour, buddy. Well over. By the time I got, the team took the huge van down there. They're prepared. By the time I got there, they threw my gear on me. We got to the back where the Denver SWAT guys were. You look at how it was done back there, and there had, like I said, 300 cops, I bet, were there by the time I rolled in. And, protocol was so poor back then. No one had made entry in there to try this. Thank God all these years that we've, trained law enforcement, it's changing. It's getting better. It's just much slower than I thought it would be. I thought all agencies, departments, and law enforcement would jump right on this, but it's been painstakingly slow over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've said a number of times, and you're more than welcome to agree or disagree with me. That's what this is all about. I mean, we both got a lot of experience. The difference being that some of the experience that we've had and some of the training we've had, you've had to implement firsthand where I never have. I was blessed with my career. I had my share of nasty situations, but nothing like this Columbine incident or the one that we're going to discuss with Albertsons in a little bit. But I've said many times, if law enforcement is going to be effective in their response to this, if they're really going to mitigate the loss of life, they need to make a national standard for law enforcement responding to an active shooter event. And that national standard has to be taught exactly the same across every academy in the United States. Therefore, if I am responding, an officer from Chicago, and I'm going into a building with somebody from LA, we should both know what to do. There should be no questions about it. And until that standard is put into place, we're always going to have this disconnect. It's never going to be the solution that it could be.
Now, I agree with you 100%. Since about 2010, when we first started the diamond formation, you waited for four cops, and we realized once the shooting starts, every 15 seconds on average, someone's being shot. So we got to get the first guy through the door. Ideally, there's someone with him. You got two people going in, but basically we start teaching the lone wolf, which first guy was through the door, ideally engaging the shooter and taking their focus off killing all the innocents and in a firefight with law enforcement till more cops could roll in there. Now, that part is what's been the hardest to uh, teach law enforcement and get the buy-in. Now, what I mean by buy-in is I still haven't grasped this as cops say, and it's not all of them because there's some great heroes and this has worked across the United States. Hey, I'm not going in there. My life was worth something. And I've just had, it's just hard for me going through, basically 3 mass shootings that people think that way, right? How could you say that when there's innocent people, innocent children being killed? How are you not flying through that door and doing your best? And, but the cops would still say to me, I'm not going in. I'm going to wait till I have partners and more people with me. And I said, well, that's not the standard here. Your training is this, follow your training, take the focus off of that shooter, killing these innocent people and do your job.
Yeah.
And it's been tough. It really
Yeah.
has. And it's disheartening as I watch all these mass shootings go, across the United States and the world. I study what happens and basically the time frames law enforcement took to get there and as much information as I could possibly get on how they responded. Some were fantastic. Some years ago about, in Florida, how they did that in the nightclub was just painful to watch and hear
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
because they did the same thing we did in Columbine, right? So, but overall, it's getting better all the time. And there has some heroic cops over the years that have stopped these so fast. And, I wish I could shake all their hands personally.
Yeah. And, I think what you did with your team in the aftermath of Columbine it was all outlined in your book. I find it to be fascinating. I find it to be amazing, but most of all, I find it to be a great way to vet the people that are really cut out to do this and those that aren't. My agency when I we didn't have we had an equivalent of a SWAT team. We called it high risk entry. We did a lot of training and whatnot, but when I watched something like Uvalde unfold, and I think back to our day, Grant, you would have had to shoot the entire team and kill them to keep them from going into that room. And to see all of these responding officers standing around going, well, what do we do, Sarge? What do you want to do, Sarge? I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. So the time that you put into your team in the aftermath of Columbine to get them to be what you described as the best in the nation, very impressive. And I applaud you. My hat's off to you and all of the officers that worked so tirelessly and gave everything that they had to make sure that events like Columbine were not going to happen ever again. Very, very commendable, even within the law enforcement arena.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure that I got that out there. So um, I can't imagine, reading your book and I can almost because I've done these things, right? So I can almost put myself in your position. And after the clearing is done and all of that, and you're starting to decompress, I got to ask, what keeps you and the people that responded to this thing at that point from just collapsing in sheer exhaustion emotionally and physically? Because I know just what it takes out of you to clear, just a small section of a building, to clear an entire high school like that for hours on end. It had to be painstakingly horrific.
Yeah, I tell you, buddy, it was obviously adrenaline after a few hours starts wearing off, and then you realize it stings a little bit. But everything we saw, there was no stopping. And the fact that we thought we had 7 to 9 shooters and we were going to still run into them. And where were they? And we weren't going to quit looking for them. So we went through that entire school, um, and then the other team that was down in the auditorium did the rest of it. But it was the emotion walking out of there. People I'd known, had written a little bit about that. And one of our negotiators wrote this long article on it, and he talked about seeing me as I came out and sat down, and it was kind of heartfelt because I didn't realize how bad I looked when it was all over, you know? Like, I can't believe that just happened, and we couldn't stop it, and,
Yeah.
uh, result was, horrific. So, and, of course, that was my second mass shooting. I'm thinking, "Am I gonna win these?" Is there any way to win these? So, um, yeah, they not taking it too far, but we jumped in the back of the SWAT van. They're taking us back to the department. And then the psychs were there and they're going to talk to us. And, truthfully, Dan, no one's talking to the psychs. We
Right.
sit, we listen. Nobody's going to say, I'm not feeling good. Please unplug me. It has
Right.
never happened in the history of law enforcement. You take tactical guys and ask them that question because they all know what's going to happen. You're done. You're going to be
Right.
unplugged at least a period of time before you ever get. So all the times I've been to the psychs, all the suspensions I had, I never talked to them. I would
Sure.
say, sign that damn thing and I'll be out of here. And we're all smiling. I'm back to work.
Right. Yeah. What do I need to tell you to check the box so I can get back to work?
That's right. That's it. We're wasting time. So, but to answer your question, the next day was hard watching it on TV, because obviously I got home, uh, went to bed, woke up the next morning, seeing it all unfold still nationwide with all the media, and you got people from Washington going down there, and it was just unbelievable that the response to it and how much coverage it was still getting. And then we, as a team, when it was over, agreed we wouldn't talk about it. We wouldn't, in respect for everything that happened and the people that died, we wouldn't share our story. Turned out to be the worst thing we could have ever done, ever in any shooting, because we had, complete dipshit detectives from other agencies telling telling the media what they would have done if they were there.
Sure.
And so the guy never even been in a shooting. So, and then we started, people started saying cowards, and it was painful beyond belief, and it tore us apart, no doubt. The team leader at the time, Barry Williams, fantastic team leader, just tough as nails guy. It took a toll on him beyond belief. And he literally was the toughest man I'd ever met in my life. And within a couple years, him and I were at odds. I started moving up and taking over the team. We couldn't train enough, fast enough. I had my young group, he had the old group, and it was ripping us apart. So by the time I finally took over, Barry left, the old guys left, and I started anew with a brand new team, of all young guys. And I can't blame any of the guys for leaving because, here I was. I was going to run people into the ground before I ever lost one of those again, no doubt. And they
Yeah.
knew, and they weren't going to have any part of that. I understand. So it took, and my partner at the time, AJ, it was like he was there. He was on the other team down in the auditorium, but he understood and he backed it 100%. So we did build a team that was turned out to be unbelievable.
Yeah. 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 It's in, law enforcement in any respect is a very, very difficult career. And back when you and I did it, when you could actually do police work, it was tough enough then. But to be part of a team like you built, I don't know that anybody can really comprehend the level of commitment that takes, and the place that you have to be in your head to be able to be successful in that role. So just an amazing story. And I want to get into a little bit because the fact that you were involved in the Columbine incident and then the lessons learned from it and building the SWAT team that you built is, boy, it could be enough to cover more than just this episode on this podcast. But this wasn't the only active shooting event that you were ever involved in. So let's talk a little bit about the Albertsons case, which was prior to Columbine, correct?
Yeah, April 20th, 1995. Yep, so 4 years prior.
So this was a case involving a grocery store where an employee worked, right? And it was domestic related initially. Is that my understanding from your book?
Correct. Yep. The Albert Petrowski, the shooter in this case, his wife worked there, and he believes she was having an affair with the managers there, or a
Okay.
man.
So take us through that incident because the big difference between that one and this one is that upon arrival, and you were working that day in a patrol capacity, correct?
I was, absolutely. Yeah.
So you weren't part of a responding or in charge of a responding SWAT team. You were responding to a call for service, or tell us how it unfolded. Grant, I'll let you tell the story.
Absolutely, and I'll start with, my sergeant at the time was Tim Mossberg, a great man. You know, he was, honest as the day is long, had 5 children, 1 on the way, a very respected guy. Um, he met with me that morning because I had a burglary. It was daytime, roughly 10 in the morning, and him and I were talking, and that's when he said, you know, "Hey, my wife's having another child," and you know, congratulations. You know, him and I didn't hang out. We were very different people, but he was just the nicest, kindest guy you could ever meet. And you know, as far as a law enforcement guy, that's who you want coming to your house when something's wrong because he was great. However, that we were talking when that call came out, and it came out as a shooting inside the Albertsons, and there were people shot inside the Albertsons, people shot outside the Albertsons, and him and I were about 2 miles away. We were, you know, basically car to car. So I said, I'm going, and I was facing, you know, towards the street, so I got out in front of him. And you know, back then, again, now you're thinking so far back, 95. You know, we're ripping into this thing, lights and siren on, and what I didn't know is Albert Trusky parked a van there at the high point in the parking lot, opened the van door when he came out of shooting people inside the store, got behind a 50 caliber, had all his other ammo laid out along with his weapons with that open van door, the side door, and laid behind that gun waiting for us. So he listened to us come right into that parking lot. Soon as I got close, um, one of the witnesses came out, a guy riding a bike, and he said, he's in that van. And I said, which van? And he's pointed at this brown van that was parked at the far end of the parking lot. He says, that brown van. Right then, Albert Petrowski opened up on me with that 50 cal. And fortunately, I wasn't getting hit, but that allowed Tim, my sergeant, to get in front of me going into that parking lot. And to get in that parking lot, you had to go all the way down and kind of turn. And him and I went basically right through that lot, right at that guy, Tim. And by the time I could see him laying down, he had shot Tim's car. So that he lay behind that 50 cal. I had a good vision. He hit Tim's car right in the engine block, shrapnel that engine and what was left of that 50 cal round completely covered Tim. Then he jumped up at that point with an SKS, shot Tim in the face. Of course, Tim had crashed, and then turned to me and started firing. Um, you know, being new. So this, if you think about how this worked, 1995, I was a SWAT team member, young guy in my 20s. The department wouldn't even let us carry rifles in our cars. So, yeah, I'm a full SWAT team member, certified and everything, and in my car, I had, you know, my 45. So, he is firing
Yeah,
at me with this SKS, standing up, just opening up. I'm backing up, um, and all this someone starts shooting at him. I had no idea who it was. At the same time he's firing at me, someone else firing at him, and then I see Albert Petrowski hold the rifle over his head, lay on the ground. I drove up, took him into custody. This IRS agent comes running across the parking lot, said, I saw what was happening to you guys, and I had a 5-shot, so I started shooting at him. Well, Albert Petrowski wasn't built for this fight, obviously. He's only fighting people that don't shoot back, so
sure.
gave up right away, took him into custody. But unfortunately, Tim died. of course, the injury was just massive that he took. So,
Yeah.
inside the store, he shot his wife. He shot a manager, shot his wife's friend outside. And then the rest of the time, he went back to his van and waited for us to show up. So it was a complete ambush. And it was on the first time, Dan, I'd ever heard a 50 cal go off. And it sounded like thunder when he opened up on us. So somehow I walked out of that lot with not even a bullet hit my car. And you look at Tim's car and it was riddled, and we were right next to each other. So I always tell people I've got some angels, and they've taken care of me all the way through my career till today. I don't know why, but thank God they were there. So certainly was a sad day, but it changed. It did a few things. Changed me completely. Right, I was a young 20 guy. I can't be beat. I'm SWAT, and you realize how poorly I was actually trained at that point. I didn't go directly at him. I didn't hit him with my car. I didn't go full on aggressive at him. Because I could have taken him out with the car. Sure, I've been at shot. There have been rounds hitting my car, but I had an opportunity at one point to hit him with my car, and I didn't take it. I backed up. So I realized then, man, I learned everything wrong up to this point on how to be aggressive. And then the other part of that is, policy changes are always written in blood, right? The next day we had rifles in the car. I could have my machine guns from SWAT in the car now, but it's sad that it takes blood to get those changes to happen.
Yeah.
Um, that it definitely changed every part of my law enforcement career from that point on. So by the time Columbine arrived, I had, I couldn't move fast enough, want to move fast enough, save enough people, because I never wanted to feel like I did back then at Albertsons when Tim was shot, and I had to face Tim, his wife, and all the children. So
Yeah.
I just swore to myself I would never lose something like that again. So yeah,
And I, Grant, I'm blessed and glad that you made it through that, without getting yourself killed. I read it and I'm thinking, holy cow. I mean, not just once, but twice I'm reading about somebody I know in the stretch of a career having two of these major incidents. And knowing that it could have been any one of us at any time. I mean, there were plenty of times where I responded to calls, and in the end, you're like, I don't know how I'm still here. To be quite
yeah,
honest with you, I have no idea how I'm still here. It shouldn't have worked out this way, but I'm glad it did. So, it just goes to show you now. It took you probably about, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes to tell this story about your response to the Alberson situation, and um, the outline the whole thing for us. In reality, when we just before we started recording, I asked you how long that incident took. How long did you tell me?
probably 30 seconds from the time we got to that entrance to that.
30 seconds.
And that's probably been a little
30
long. Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
is absolutely crazy.
yeah, he had shot so many rounds within that 30 seconds, it was amazing.
Yeah. And it just goes to show you how fast these things unfold and how much damage can be done in such a short period of time. You cited the statistic earlier, and I do it all the time too when I teach, that on average, one person is shot every 15 seconds until the shooter is put down.
Right.
Um, and, if I'm teaching in a room with, 30 people in it, I tell them, do the math. Do the math. If it takes on average, the police response is 6 minutes. It's going to take them 6 minutes to get here from the time somebody calls 911. How many people in this room are dead before they ever get on the scene? And usually the answer is all of them, all of us. We would all be dead. So it's important that people recognize that although people like you who are dedicated to getting in there and doing their job, and let's face it, Grant, you and I are not the police anymore. So I don't tend to use terms such as neutralize or take down the offender. I tell people all the time, those SWAT guys go in there. When they get there, it's all about business. Nobody's carrying handcuffs because nobody's wearing them on the way out. They're going in there to find this guy and they're going to kill him. That's their job. That's what they are trained to do. A good SWAT guy like yourself is trained to go in and kill people because that's what is necessary. The difference between you and a mass murderer is that you are trained to and can control that emotion, right? It's targeted in a self defense and defense of innocent life method as opposed to going out and just shooting people at will. So it takes a special type of human being to be able to do those things. But when you look at the average Joe and how they're going to save themselves, they too need to tap into that warrior within. Because if they don't, if they simply sit and wait for somebody like you to get there, the chances that they're going to become a statistic goes up tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think how even law enforcement, how few of them can actually do that. If you think what Tim Mossberger did going to Albertsons, of course I'm going in, but Tim, he was not a SWAT guy. He hadn't been trained at my level. He didn't hesitate to fly right into that and start trying to engage that shooter to stop him from killing people, right? So we need more cops like Tim in the world, right? Unfortunately, he paid for it, but the fact is that guy, we got there so quick and we were so aggressive going at him. He had no time to shoot anybody else. We were driving as fast as we could. We got there as fast as we could. We went right at him. Uh, right or wrong, I don't really care what people think. It had to be done because if we stayed outside and did a long distance shoot with them with handguns, how many people get killed in the meantime? That people that are running across that parking lot that he's shooting. So we need in this world a lot more Tim Mossbergers, especially in law enforcement. And um, as I watch law enforcement and I've seen it progress in time, and I've trained them we started training in 2000 right after Columbine. So many examples of people that could fight, law enforcement, and people that could not fight. And what I mean by there's a shooting going in, even if it's simunitions, which hurts like hell, as you know, they can't get in through the room or they get shot once and they run right back out, right? It took a
Right.
certain law enforcement officer to get in there and take all those rounds and fire it all back at them. So you start realizing that no matter how big, how bad this person portrays to be, when those bullets start flying, you don't know who's going to go in and who's going to wait. Because I've seen so many battles where guys, big guys, are hiding behind cars, and little guys and ladies are passing them to get in that fight.
Yeah.
Which I would have
Yeah.
never guessed in a million years. But that's the way it truly is in the world in law enforcement. So I guess in short, I can't tell you who's going to succeed and who's going to fail, but you got to train them to a level and hope everybody does the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you had talked a little bit before too about the evolution of the police response to these events. No, gone are the days where you've got officers responding to these things with only the handgun strapped to their side. I mean, most of these agencies are now equipping these vehicles and training the officers with the use of the AR-15 style rifles. Back in my day, we weren't much different. It was post Columbine when we got the ARs issued to us and got the training in them. Prior to that, we had um, the Browning shotguns strapped to the cage in the back, which they have their application, right? But
Yeah.
you pull that thing out of the car. Back then, they had no slings on them. You pull it out of the car, you're married to it. What are you going to do with it? Right? You get the guy to surrender and you got to handcuff him. Now you're holding this 12 gauge shotgun. What are you going to do with this thing? So it was just some of it's unfortunate that law enforcement has to learn things sometimes the hard way. And then that they are so stubborn and resistant to change. Sometimes you just got to say, hey, look, we jacked this up. Or the way that we're doing this is jacked up. We're following the rules, but the rules just don't apply here because the bad guys don't follow them. So we need to adjust this. We need to change this. And again, seeing the transformations that you and your team helped to bring about for law enforcement in the aftermath, very, very admirable. Um, but the thing that I try to teach in all of our classes and try to pitch to all of our clients is that look, the police are going to get there eventually, and they're going to do their thing. Technology plays a certain part in this, cameras, alarm systems, and whatnot. But none of these things, independent of one another, is the solution to the extent that there even is a solution. This is why we call it workplace violence mitigation and not workplace violence prevention, because I don't believe in overselling what the solution is, right? You are never going to save every life. You are never going to prevent this 100%. That's prevention. We can mitigate the loss. So, talk a little bit about what the response from law enforcement is today going into these things. I know you talked about, first officer on the scene goes in. That there was a transformation from what you had at Columbine to the 4-person diamond, and then that wasn't working. And then they went to this. And now we're with the rescue task force concept. Can you talk a little bit about what that is like and what kind of dedication level it takes from the participants in that RTF to pull that off?
Sure, Dan. Like you said, right after Columbine, Barry and the leader of National Tax Association, Mr. Glick, basically got together and said, well, how do we move through something like this in the future? And that's when the diamond formation came up. We built the outlines to start teaching, and we were hoping across the United States. Ultimately, it creeped out that way, but we started with our own agency. And then what we found from that is in time, that 4-man was not working because of, like we talked about, every 15 seconds once it starts. And then how long does it take for 3 to 4 guys to get there, right? That first guy's got to go in. And then the lone wolf, first responder going in, was born from that. And now I feel every cop that gets there, even if they're by themselves, needs to go through that door. I don't care if one's at the front, one's at the back, one's at the side. They all need to just keep flooding in there every door they can get through and as many people as they can get through until it ends. And trained cops, you'd hear, blue on blue. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. If you're so shaky, you're going to shoot another cop in a uniform, then probably get another job. But get 50 cops in there in this thing, no matter where it's at. If it's a building, it's a mall, you need as many people in there as you possibly can to engage that person. Either he gives up or he dies. There's not an in between.
Right.
So that's where we put the lone wolf, and then ideally you got there with a partner, and 2 of you could even be better at it, right? You're moving through, and you're moving and shooting and moving and shooting, but ultimately that lone wolf is what's being taught today. One of my SWAT guys back in the day, still doing TAC 1 consulting, he's teaching across the nation, does a great job with it, by the way. And it's all about that. If your department's doing something different than that, you're 30 years ago, change,
Yeah.
teach those people in 1 and 2-man response. And you're right. I love the groups that are going to show up. You see now you've got your patrol guys going, and then you got groups showing up completely tacked out within minutes. So
Sure.
that's what I'm enjoying, because the patrol guys in there in a battle, and 4 guys show up in tack gear and machine guns. That party's going to end quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. So Grant, as we try to wrap this up a little bit, I always ask our guests if they've got any kind of safety tips or suggestions that they can give to the average Joe, with regard to if you ever find yourself in the middle of one of these things. We talk about situational awareness, and people have a tendency to talk themselves out of shit, right? I pulled up to the gas station. Something didn't feel right. The clerk, I could see it through the window that he was standing there with his hands in the air, but I went in anyway. Okay, you're an idiot. I mean, why does he got his hands in the air? Just kind of look around a little bit. So, what kind of advice can you throw out, given all of your experience and everything that you've done, that might help somebody who is much less aware of their surroundings get their shit together a little bit?
Well, then, almost as long as we've been teaching law enforcement response, we've been teaching school response to it. and believe me, that's evolved over time too. But I'm always believe in run, fight, and hide. Lastly, if you look at mass shootings, the guys that run and get away, of course, they're safe. The guys that fight have a great chance of surviving it, and everyone around them has a much better chance of surviving it. But someone has to have the will to do that. And if they do, they can win. They can overpower one person, right? Whether it be a gun or a knife or whatever they're using. It's a great way to do it. Lastly, I say hide. I mean, if there's a place to get to, a closet or something, you have to. Last response, hide. But if we look at, I always tell people, you look at Columbine and what happened in that library, there were children under desks everywhere that were trying to hide from those shooters. And all they did was hunt them, shoot them to the desk multiple times. So that's what you get in a hide. If you don't have a really good place to hide, uh, don't do it. Run,
Yeah.
fight, hide. And I'll preach that forever. And as
Yeah.
far as people, you see a guy with his hands up in the air in a gas station, and you still go in there. I got no words for you. I can't even help you. And it's so, I, you know,
Right.
uh,
But Grant, I mean, think about it. How many times in your career have you responded and dealt with a complainant where you walk up to them and one of the first things they say is, I knew this was going to happen. I could have told you this was going to happen, and I knew who was going to do it. I'm like, well, why did you wait until afterwards to say something? I don't get it. I don't get it.
well, like comedian says, here's your sign, right?
You're right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I had no words. But here's an example of, Dan, before we go in the book, that last chapter, the Platte Canyon chapter, of law enforcement response where that shooter went into Platte Canyon School. It wasn't in our jurisdiction; it was further up in the mountains. But um, that their patrol team, got there so fast. If that man wanted to shoot people and move from room to room, he was caught. He got held to one room. He'd shot
Yeah.
rounds. He hadn't shot people. Turned into a hostage thing. I don't know what his ultimate plans were. It was mass casualties because we knew that we found his note later, but those cops locked him down to one room, and then it went into negotiations, and we were able to get nearly all the children out except for two that he held, and then of course we used. By then the team was pretty advanced. We used explosives on the door and the wall to blow it out. That could have been a bad day for all the so many of the children in that school if those guys didn't respond the way they did. So there's a great success story. Unfortunately, one girl, beautiful young girl, lost her life in that one, but it could have been so much worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Grant, I can't thank you enough for carving out some time for me to tell your story. I would like to, in honor of the work that you did and everything that you've gone through, uh, and I know that you would have it no other way. I'm going to dedicate this episode to Tim Mossberger, who gave his life doing what he had signed up to do. It was horribly unfortunate, and God bless his family and his kids, and additionally all of the victims in the Columbine incident. I I can't imagine losing a child or a loved one that way. Absolutely horrible. The name of Grant's book is Bullet Riddled. Again, you can find it on Amazon. Great read, some great stories in here. Not all of them are as intense as Albertson's and Columbine. You'll learn that you should never shoot a bear in the ass with a beanbag gun. It does nothing but make them very upset. So there is some humor to some of the stories as well. And as we say in law enforcement, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, reality is always more entertaining than the fictional stories than we could possibly tell you. So if you like our content, if you like this, share it, post it. We are the Workplace Violence Mitigation Podcast, the Workplace Violence Mitigation Institute. Thank you again, Grant, for your time. And I am Lieutenant Dan. Watch for our next episode. See ya.